Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'd like to give a brief update on the trust experiment, as well as my health circumstance and the revelation that came from the trust experiment, as well as how that affects my courses and an upcoming course that's just come to me for training. Many students are seeking more advanced training, and now that COVID-19 is on the wane, and hopefully travel restrictions will be lifted and many other types of restrictions be lifted, we can do some physical training on my property. My health situation seems to be such that not only is it possible, but my body seems to want to do that. So that's great. Before we get to the courses, I'm going to just talk a little bit about the trust experiment. Maybe about a month and a half ago or 2 months ago, I think it was actually, might have been essentially the beginning of January. So it's been a couple of months now. My body started to go into a paralysis state, and it was very painful. Lost most of the motion of my left arm and was having pain in my right. And eventually it's something that would take over. At that time, I felt a powerful need to just fully trust the body. And the body's direction at that time seemed to be turning into paralysis, and that was right. And so I had to totally agree to paralysis if I'm going to trust that my life would be as a paralyzed person, arms, possibly even legs. So, but without trying to change the outcome, to just fully accepting and turning into that process. And as a result of doing this powerful communication, I was having regular, pretty much every day, visions and mystical experiences that were revealing things about not only my own body, but the world circumstance. Towards the end of that process, basically over the last 2-3 weeks, I began a fast, or my body naturally began a fast, which means it simply wouldn't eat any food. And that started at first just by trickling off. I had a few days where I just ate maybe one meal and just a few bites of something. And then that went into just nothing. Just, I think I had maybe broth for a couple of days. And then, because that's all I could eat. And then after that, it was just nothing for, I don't know, maybe a week or 10 days. And then after that, there was broth entered back in that lasted for 4 or 5 days. And then we started eating solids. And I'm at a point now of the last few days I've been eating solids, but still very, very basic diet. But from, as was documented from the beginning of January throughout this process, many things started to improve in my body. Not only did I regain the range of motion, so I can, I have a solid range of motion with my neck and arms. I couldn't do those things before, but my hearing improved dramatically. So where I was used to listen to the TV, that volume I used to listen to it is actually really loud and overwhelming now. And I've turned it down about maybe 0.25%, a quarter of the volume. So if it was normally set at 20, it's now like 15. And but my hearing improved dramatically. My sense of smell improved dramatically. Really, all of my senses improved. There were changes in my eyes. And then in the last few weeks, my wife has noticed, and now some students have emailed me to say that my eyes are actually brighter as a result of, they've noticed that my eyes are brighter as a result of this whole process. And I think that I started receiving emails on that maybe a month and a half ago. That was even before the diet. And then key point here is I had a balding spot on my head, which was really apparent in kind of, this whole area here. It seems to be filling back in with hair. Yeah, so there it is. You see, I can part it and you can see it's pretty thin. But if I just brush my hair naturally, it covers up. Now, that was no way that was to cover that up before. Not that I particularly cared, but my wife certainly did. She would try to, why don't you do this or that? It's not a big deal for me. But I had like a little papal cap going, and that seems to be filling back in again. So that shows that the body is revitalizing, which is great. Now, that was not the intention of the experiment, the trust experiment. There was no outcome in mind whatsoever, aside from just trust whatever the body's doing. And so that was the experiment. I highly encourage anybody who's not seen those videos. I believe there's 9 or 10 on my YouTube channel under the trust headline or whatever. There's a whole, a whole series of videos I made on trust. So you can look those up very easily. You can type in the trust experiment, or just go to my YouTube channel, you'll find it. So at the beginning of that experiment, I mentioned that I felt like going through this process of just trusting with no outcome in mind. So this is not positive thinking, right? Nor is it negative thinking. It is just trusting. And that makes it very different from belief that you're going to heal because you trust. That would still be positive thinking. This is different than that. There was no outcome in mind. But as I mentioned very early on in the series, that I felt doing this my body made it very clear there'd be some incredible revelation at some point through this process. That revelation occurred to me on January 2nd, February 22nd, 2022. Don't know why that day. It's an auspicious number, 22222. There wasn't even a thought that was the date and that was important. I didn't actually find out that was the date until that vision had manifested itself. I didn't, but I think people that are into numerology will enjoy that coincidence or synchronicity, however you want to view it. The issue with that realization that came, it is tremendously profound, and it is, in a sense, where we're going as human beings. Discovering sort of what we'll call the master within, and the way to which that manifests in our lives. The issue with it is, with many mystical visions and visions, there may be a time where it's not appropriate to utter. There's a digestive time. And I'm still in this stage where I can't really talk about it. I've essentially avoided, I have some close students who often are interested and would like to talk. I've avoided talking about this in any detail because it's still the digestive time. And I imagine that digestive time is also going to be finding the medium to which this is to be conveyed. It may be in a book, it may be in course. It's unlikely to be just general YouTube audience, because what I realize is so profoundly deep. Just hearing it can actually be psychologically damaging for a person who hasn't achieved a significant degree of centeredness and openness of ego. And that's a whole explanation of what I mean, openness of ego, which we can get into some other time. But a person who's still highly self-absorbed, hearing this information actually can be counterproductive. So this is not for the general YouTube audience. If you're interested in learning about this some point in the future, you're going to want to start training yourself with the Warriors Meditation, with the TM methods. There's some courses on my website that'll help you get that level of maturity and awareness that we're talking about, where maybe I could convey this sort of information to you at some point. Thinking about it more deeply, I'm not sure this could be conveyed in a book, because anybody could read it that may not be prepared for it. We'll see. I mean, ultimately, these things just come through me right now. I'm not in a place where I can convey it. So I just wanted to let you know that revelation did occur, and that it is having its effect on my body, mind matrix, and we'll see what it turns into. Now, with regard to courses, it seems like my body has turned strongly into a rejuvenating, revitalizing process, and that's allowing me to teach physically where I wouldn't have really been able to before. It wouldn't have felt appropriate. I wouldn't have had the energy for it. Seems I have the energy for it now, and that happens to be happening sort of simultaneously with maybe COVID restrictions being waning, and more safety, and the ability for people maybe to travel. And so I'm going to have a course that's just it's a week-long course at my training facility in Southern Oregon, where people can tent and physically learn the Warriors Meditation in a way that you've never been exposed to it. There's a lot more to this process than I've ever been able to convey through books or or courses online. Ultimately, ideally, it is taught physically because there's so much more to be aware of, and that cannot be conveyed in any other way. So the issue is that my training facility is a maximum of really 10 people could do this. It's just a limited space. Maybe if we find some other facility somewhere else that could work if there was enough interest. But June is the ideal month. We have facilitator training where people learn to facilitate the Warriors Meditation. That's a 2-week program on my property, and the site starts in the middle of June and goes towards the end of June. I'm thinking that the week prior to that, beginning of June, essentially, we do the Warriors Meditation, physical training here at the training center. And that would be at 10 people. Now, if there was more interest than just the 10 people, then we could maybe have the very first week is a group comes through, and the second week a group comes through, and then the next 2 weeks is the facilitator training. But in any case, I'm quite thrilled to be able to offer those trainings again. It's been 3-4 years since I had any physical training on my property due to various health issues that started. The paralysis thing started 3 years ago. It's a long story. First video explains it in a little bit more depth. And so that's pretty much it. If you're interested in the physical training of the Warriors Meditation, you'll want to first visit my website. I'm going to put up the description in the next few days. So you might visit my website, richardlhaight.com, and you go to the courses page, and I'll be working on that description over the next few days. But if you're interested in what I've explained here, you might send me an email. I need to get a sense of how many people are interested. If there's not enough interest, you just won't run it. Maybe people feel satisfied with what they've received through books and through the online courses. I would just say that sometimes satisfaction is a way of holding yourself back. Don't be satisfied with things. In my opinion, I'm not satisfied with things. It's not the mindset. The mindset is continual exploration, continual depth, not to be complacent. If you feel like that's true for you as well, this may be something that you'll want to pursue. There's going to be some prerequisites. Some people will have had to have gone through the 25-day Warriors Meditation course. That's basically the only prerequisite that will keep me from having to kind of like start you from zero, right? And you can find that course on my website. If you've completed that course prior to the start of prior to your registration, then your registration could be valid. Now, again, if we have more than 10 people that would like to do the first week, another 10 people, if it's 20 people total, if we have more than 20 people total, we may have to, a lot more, we may have to find another location that's not in Southern Oregon. The limitation really is Southern Oregon, where we have these wildfires, or maybe all of Oregon now. In the last 10 years, wildfires have just been ramping up, and the smoke is just hazardous. You can't be outside for long periods of time without risking your health. So June is really the opportune time. October is a possibility. There was 1 year where the smoke was still going on through October. That could happen again this year. It's not the perfect solution, but it still is nice weather. If we get the first half of October in, we can do tenting on the property and or the forest adjacent to the property, and have 10 people come in on a per week. Then that's a possibility. It's the lesser of the two. June is really the ideal time to do this. If we find someplace somewhere else and we happen to have 50 students that are interested, we could do it all together in 1 week. It'd be just a great meditation party. Now, this training, the facilitator training, which will take place in the second half of June, will be very, very intensive training. This week-long training will be much less intense. It's still going to be exhausting. It's still going to challenge you, but it's going to be much less intense because you're not training to be a facilitator. We're going to be doing many of the same practices, but in different ways, with different intentions, and because um, without that, the pressure training that will take place in the facilitator course, there are certain there's certain areas we simply won't be able to go. But that's not a problem. Not everybody wants to be a facilitator. Not everybody wants to go that intense so quickly. So the week-long warriors meditation course, physical warriors meditation course, is probably going to be the option that most people would be interested in. And it will be a type of training I doubt you've received anywhere else. And it may be extremely beneficial for your life in the long term, because it's going to not only reveal more depth of the warriors meditation, but more depth of the subconscious awareness, as well as your capacity with the warriors meditation moving forward, because it's going to give you some deeper insight into what the warriors meditation is about. So even through your own training, you'll have more accuracy. So if you're interested in that sort of training, visit my website, richardlhaight.com. You'll find the link in the description below. If you like and you feel like you need to join the course, send me an email. You'll find the email there on my website, and we'll go from there. If there's enough interest, it'll happen. Thank you so much. Hope to talk to you soon.